Hi, welcome to Deep Recaps. Today's film is the 1988 coming-of-age classic, Big. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Josh Baskin is your average 12-year-old kid. He plays video games, likes baseball, and dislikes sharing his room, even if it's with his infant sister. Like most kids his age, he has a major crush on a girl named Cynthia. One day, at the carnival, he sees Cynthia and tries to go on the scary ride just to impress her. However, he is too short to get on it and has to step back right in front of her. Dejected, he walks around and sees a strange machine called Zoltar. He drops some coins inside, and Zoltar begins moving in a creepy way. The machine tells him to make a wish. So, Josh wishes to be big. He then gets a card saying your wish is granted. Just then, he notices that the machine is not plugged in. Zoltar must be solar powered. The next morning, Josh heads to the washroom and sees a much older, naked man staring back at him in his reflection. This would have been a whole different thing if it wasn't a fun family drama. He freaks out and runs back to his room, where he remembers the Zoltar card. He tries to put on his pants, but they're too small for him. So he rushes into his parents' room and puts on his father's clothes. He then barely escapes the house without eating any breakfast or being seen by his mother. Josh goes straight to the site of the carnival, but finds it empty. So he goes back home. But his mother gets scared, thinking that he's a robber. She chases him around the house with a knife. So Josh escapes his home again and instead heads to school. He meets up with his neighbor and best friend, Billy. However, Billy also freaks out after being cornered by a grown man in the gym closet. So, Josh sings him their favorite song, and Billy finally recognizes him. Back at Josh's house, his parents have called the police and are now describing the intruder to them. Billy sneaks some clothes from his own home and gives them to Josh. He also steals some money from his father, and the two leave for New York to lie low for a while. Looking for a hotel to stay in, they unwittingly choose a low-grade and badly managed place. Josh gets a terrible room with bad smells. Since Billy has to be home, he leaves, promising to skip school and come back tomorrow. Josh is super scared to be here all alone. He may look big, but he's just a little kid. He hears a man screaming outside and cries himself to sleep, calling out to his mama. The following day, Josh and Billy look around for the Zoltar machine. However, they do not find it anywhere, and Josh begins to lose hope. Their best lead is to order a list of distributors who might possibly have the machine. However, the list will take 6 weeks to arrive. So, in the meantime, they look for a job so that Josh will have something to do until the list arrives, and so that he can continue to afford his hotel room from hell. They find a job offering for a computer operator at Macmillan Toys. Josh is interested in computers and in toys, so he goes for the interview. Like any good professional, Josh lies his way through the interview and actually gets the job. He starts his job at the toy company immediately, finding everything new and strange. Elsewhere in the office, Susan Lawrence informs her colleague and boyfriend, Paul, that the new Huggy Bear series is starting to flop, and they have to think up something new. Josh begins to get scared of his new environment and calls his mother. She does not recognize him, so he says that Josh is safe with him. His mother thinks him to be an abductor and demands to speak to Josh. Josh proves that Josh is safe by singing his mother's favorite song to her. His mother breaks down in tears. Sometime later, Josh gets his first paycheck and is extremely excited.
$187?
So he goes with Billy and withdraws the money, the most money he's ever seen in his 12 years on this earth. They spend all the money on random things. He gets a stomach ache with all the junk food, and so he calls home. Pretending to be a health clinic, he asks what they give their children for stomach aches. The next day, he goes to the company's toy store and plays around. There, he meets Mr. Macmillan, the company owner, and his boss. They get to talking about the company's toys, and Josh gives his honest 12-year-old boy's opinion on the toys there, which impresses Mr. Macmillan. Then, they reach a walking piano, where the two perform a pretty good rendition of Heart and Soul. After this timeless scene, Mr. Macmillan is happy to have done something out of the ordinary. The following day, Mr. Macmillan makes Josh the vice president of product development. Susan and Paul are furious that Macmillan chose someone who's only been around for a week for such a promotion. Josh and Billy go to Josh's new office, where Josh shows off all the cool things he gets to do, like playing with toys and reviewing them for payment. He also has his own secretary, whom he gets to order around. Billy thinks that Josh is the luckiest guy alive. Unfortunately, this is also how many grown men feel about having a secretary. Meanwhile, Josh's parents have started putting out missing notices around town, including on some milk cartons. Josh then rents out a penthouse apartment with Billy. He writes a letter to his parents, saying that he is fine and pretending that his abductors are treating him well. In the meantime, he starts enjoying his carefree life with Billy. One day, the company hosts a party. Susan takes this opportunity to try and promote her creation, but Mr. McMillian waves her off. Josh arrives just then in a fancy suit, his 12-year-old opinion of high fashion. And hey, who's to say that he's wrong? Everyone laughs at him, but Mr. McMillan finds it amusing, as does Susan. Susan invites Josh away from the party, and they leave together, much to Paul's annoyance. Josh is amazed by the limo that he's in. Susan tries to get to know him, but he ignores her serious adult talk and plays around. Susan then asks to see his apartment, so Josh takes her there. She thinks that she's going in for a nice time, while he thinks that she just wants a sleepover. Josh gleefully shows Susan how cool his place is, but Susan is just shocked to see his apartment, set up like a kid's palace. He pushes her to jump on the trampoline with him. Susan is totally out of her element, but with his assurance, she starts enjoying it soon enough. Later that night, Susan tries to seduce Josh, but Josh is as turned on as a 12-year-old, seeing a grown-up woman. In other words, he's just plain confused. He simply wishes her good night and leaves Susan to sleep. Paul is angry at Josh for stealing his girl, so he forcefully takes Josh to play squash. They have a decent game until Paul starts cheating. Josh calls him out on it, and they get into a fight. Josh gets hurt, and Susan patches him up. She says that they're all just competitive due to the nature of business. Josh says that Susan is not like that. She's nice. So, Susan rewards him with a kiss. Later that night, Josh gets to talking with Mr. McMillan. The big man laments that all kids end up growing up and having crushes on girls. This is why it's so difficult in the toy industry, he says. Elsewhere, Susan starts falling hard for Josh, so she finally gathers her courage and breaks up with Paul. The following day, Billy throws a surprise birthday party for Josh, but immediately afterwards, Josh leaves Billy and goes to a carnival with Susan. Billy is beginning to lose patience with his big friend. Josh and Susan have a great time playing all the games at the carnival. They're so happy together that Josh doesn't notice the Zoltar machine standing right there. Afterwards, they go dancing. As they dance, Susan starts to admit that she's falling for Josh. Josh starts to tell her his secret, but then lets his hormones think for him instead and kisses her. They then go to her place, where things start to get hot. Ooh, apples! Josh and Susan are both feeling rejuvenated in their lives. Every day seems to bring something new and great to both of them. One day, they have a dinner with a colleague. There, the man's son has issues with his homework, and Josh helps him, impressing the women there. The moral of the scene, I guess, is that 12-year-olds are smarter than women. Meanwhile, Billy calls Josh, but it is answered with silence. Sometime later, Mr. McMillan gives Josh the task of designing an entirely new line of toys. Josh does not have any ideas, but Susan encourages him to try. Josh sees some kids enjoying comic books and comes up with an idea for an electronic comic book. Susan is excited about this genius idea. Josh basically just invented the goddamn iPad. Meanwhile, Billy gets a letter from the Department of Consumer Affairs with a list of distributors who might have the Zoltar machine. He calls Josh again, but gets no response. So, he goes to the city and interrupts Josh in the middle of a call. Josh starts acting all grown up and businesslike, but Billy reminds Josh that he's really just a 12-year-old kid. That night, Billy gets to talking with Josh's mother, who is deeply distressed over Josh's disappearance. She tries to give Josh's birthday gift to him, but Billy sends it back, reassuring her that everything is going to be okay, and Josh will come back soon enough. Meanwhile, Josh starts playing a video game that he always used to play when at home. He then goes around town and fondly watches kids enjoying their childhood, playing games, going out, and more. All of this causes him to start thinking about the life that he left behind. So, he finally goes home and reveals his secret to Susan. He says that he's just a child who's not ready for any of this. Susan says that she's heard that one before and thinks that he just has commitment issues. He tries to tell her about the Zoltar machine, but Susan thinks he's making stuff up to get out of the relationship. Later that night, Susan goes through Josh's wallet and finds the Zoltar card. She looks up in wonder, afraid that what Josh said might actually be true. Soon, she begins to notice all of his little habits, like picking bubblegum, that are typically only exhibited by kids. Elsewhere, Billy calls the list of distributors. After much trial and error, he eventually finds one that has a Zoltar machine. So, he goes to Josh and gives him the address of the place. However, Josh has a big presentation to give for his electronic comic book. Billy leaves, disappointed. During the presentation, Josh is preoccupied with the thought of what Billy said to him. The administration likes the idea, but Josh immediately excuses himself from the room. Susan realizes that Josh was telling the truth and follows him out. Josh leaves in a cab, and Susan is too late to meet him. But she does meet Billy and begs him to tell her where Josh went. When she says that she's Josh's girlfriend, Billy laughs, but ultimately, he gives her the address. Josh reaches the address, where he finally comes face to face with the Zoltar machine. Susan also follows him there. While she's looking for Josh, he makes the wish to become a kid again. He again receives a card telling him that his wish is granted. Just then, Susan arrives and sees everything for herself. She realizes that Josh got his wish and regrets not listening to him last night. Susan begins to cry, especially after finding out that he's only 12. Not only is Susan single again, she's also a pedophile. Josh asks Susan to come with him, but she does not want to live an entire childhood again. I can think of a lot of people these days who would gladly take that offer. Instead, she gives him a ride to his home. They lean in for one last kiss, but Susan avoids the cold walls of prison by kissing Josh on the forehead. They wish each other a final goodbye, after which Josh walks away. As Susan watches, Josh slowly reverts to his 12-year-old self. He enters his home, and we can hear his mother super happy to finally see her missing son. Subscribe for more content like this. Turn on notifications if you want to be the first to see new drops, and leave a like to help the channel out. See you next time.